These guys are never prepared. We need to give them an extra number to count.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the countdown's over, and it's just recording now. So
yeah, I know.
It ended at 3.
Yeah. Hey, man.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good.
Awesome.
What's been on the top of your mind for the last week?
Oh,
other than moving.
Boy.
I know you're moving to Vancouver.
Yeah. So should the video footage of this ever be released? I don't live with boxes in my house normally. But yes,
yeah.
We're packing to move to go to British Columbia. Very exciting. From Ontario. We're going to drive. It's going to take 6 days.
I was talking about how I can't wait to visit you. And give and show my daughters what good seafood tastes like.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because it's like Addison's favorite thing is like sushi.
Oh, amazing.
And all she ever eats is Ottawa sushi, which is like not even the
like
same
the best
thing.
place in the city is like
is sushi in Vancouver.
It's probably middle tier, maybe. Yeah.
So I'm excited to come over there and get some sushi for Addison.
Okay, well, that's a great goal. It's a very noble goal. We will certainly make sure that there's sushi for Addison. But yeah, no, like I honestly can't wait. It's a big focus, a bit of a drain, obviously, trying to find an apartment long distance without, having anyone to like be there. Like you can't go see the place, so trying to figure that out. But
right,
I've done
you're
it before.
looking right in Vancouver, like the central. I don't really know the layout there.
Well, yeah. So basically, like downtown Vancouver is like kind of on an island, like right in the middle of it, and with 2 bridges out, like a north and a south bridge, kind of. So that's like DT Vancouver.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's actually crazy if you look at it.
That's kind of cool.
It's almost like looks like a horseshoe goes around. Yeah, bust up in a map, but like a little horseshoe like river system kind of goes around. Like it's obviously the ocean coming into the Fraser River is what it's called. But anyway, there's 2 bridges, one north, one south, and downtown Vancouver has like 4 neighborhoods, basically, which is like East Van, West Van, Gastown, and then another one that I always forget the name of every time. And but anyway, we're looking, if we're gonna be on that island, like the actual DT, it would be West Van. But like it's a little tricky and it's a lot of condos. Like it very much, it's definitely Vancouver, but it's like a Toronto-y Vancouver because it's such small real estate. There's more condos, like big towers, like all that stuff.
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
So the actual neighborhoods we're looking in are Kitsilano, which is you go south on the bridge, like you exit the island, and then you kind of go more to the west towards University of British Columbia.
Yeah.
Anyway, great area there. And then North Van. So north side, same type of idea. You just go up the bridge, but then kind of to the west a bit.
Okay, yeah. So basically, if you don't live on the central island, you want to live kind of just on the other side of one of the bridges.
Yeah, because like we want to
be
explore
pretty close to the central island.
Yeah, like if I put this in a jobs to be done framework, it's like I have real zero interest in going into downtown Vancouver, like because we're remote workers. Like, so there's no reason other than exploration, like for fun. It seems like an amazing area with fun stuff, like Granville Island, all these things. So being actually just outside of downtown's kind of great because then we don't need to worry about like traffic crunches that happen on those bridges. So that we can, because we want to pick up like an electric vehicle when we're out there and then like go into the wilderness. Like that's the point. Like every weekend drive away and hike, you know what I mean? Like, so being outside the actual like downtown core would probably be a better option. Plus,
so why are you looking in the west quadrant of the core?
Oh, purely like availability. So there's like a lot of those condos. People did the exodus just like they did everywhere else with the pandemic. So there's more apartments available. Like we're looking in the kind of 2-bed kind of range because we need at least one for an office. So yeah. Yes, very thrilling. I know.
Cool.
I bring my product obnoxiousness to everything. So
you're such a nerd, man.
We've written workflows. No. Yeah. Anyway, that's embarrassing.
What else you been working on?
Like Codex, full tilt. I'm kind of going like a bit nutty about it. Like we've done 15 customer discovery interviews with people from Facebook, Amazon, Twitter's coming up actually, and like all that fun stuff, Shopify. And then we've conducted 8 early investor kind of, I'm going to call them a touch point. It's not a pitch, but it is a pitch. Like no matter what, if you talk to an investor, it's technically a pitch. Sure. Because they're judging you, I guess. Yeah. But so we've done 8 of those, and basically on the whole, like extremely positive feedback. So with the customer discovery, I tried to be
Nice.
more like proper non-biasing product skill set, like asking just questions without showing. And then
Yeah.
when we got to the end of that sort of like it was like half-hour session, so 15 minutes of just good product, just hearing what people say about this problem space, and then moving into like, okay, now I'm going to do a demo and seeing if it like fulfilled the needs they just talked about and stuff. So there's obviously a delta on every single one of those conversations, more or less.
Right,
But
of course,
for the
yeah.
most part, I'd say like half of them had a really cool reaction, which was like, when we talked about the problem space 10 minutes ago, I didn't know how you would solve it. Now when I see what you're doing, this seems genius. Like they're like strong reactions to like, wow, this is a really, really good approach to maybe solving this problem. Because like at the end of the day, it's still like a bit of a human problem. Like people have to write stuff in order for the thing to work, right?
Yeah,
Which is
of
like
course,
a real...
Yeah.
Anyway, but all the investor pitches luckily were like, well, great. Like I would give you money to go see if you can solve that, like kind of thing. So it's like, okay, that's all I need to hear.
Amazing.
That's the point. That's why we're going to raise the seed, is does the thesis work? So
Yeah.
so that's been really thrilling. And then we also introduced 15 new deals into our agency's pipeline. So it totals like almost 4 million now in pipeline active business. No way we're ever going to close it all, but trying to go through that. I don't know what happened, but January was like really quiet for us. So I spent a lot of time doing outreach. And I guess it all started paying back through February. So I've just been taking calls like crazy.
Right.
Which is nice.
People take a while to get into the year, I think. Warm up, catch up with everyone. They like at bigger places, especially. Just the goal setting for the year takes like a month, I think.
Yeah,
Longer,
and it's funny. Like
crazy,
I
but
didn't
it
think
does.
that in my business, like in an agency business building software, and generally speaking, since we're more senior, like a boutique agency, it's usually for like already like well-performing or high-performing teams. I didn't think there'd be this much seasonality in the business, but there really is. Like November, it got just quiet. And then like it didn't pick up till like early Feb. So I'm like, it's like a 3-month dearth of just like people just basically not talking to you. And I was like, oh man, I got to remember that for this next year. Cause like
all at the same time,
it introduces a serious cash flow crunch. Like,
of course. Yeah.
So, anyway, it was just really interesting. Like we obviously worked with clients that we were already working with through that period, but like no new business, no new conversations, even accounts that we're working with were like, hey, we're doing like end of year fiscal and then new year this, like no time to talk to vendors. And it's like, okay, like, cool. But anyway,
it's, they got to line up all their ducks or whatever for the year.
So now I just
get
feel
their
like
KPIs and OKRs and JOTs and JOBs and CRTs.
At least one more acronym is in there.
I made up 3 of those, so listeners can guess
no one looked
which ones were real and which ones weren't.
What about ROHAS, Adam? They have to calculate their ROHAS.
I don't know what that means, man. I have so many questions for you, man.
Let's go. Oh, and in between, we also had a great session thinking about a side project, and it's amazing.
You and I did Brandon and I did a hack day. We called it a hack day. But what it really was like an entire day of just like focused brainstorm, like loosely structured brainstorming on this like project idea for Sword and Source. We can talk about that later.
It was very fun.
If we have time.
Yep.
I just wanted to ask you, like, right at the start, you sort of rattled off all these big names, these big tech companies that you did customer discovery calls with.
Yep.
I think it'd be interesting to tell people, like, how did you book all these calls with all these big names? Like, what was the process like for that?
Sure. So I've got a cheat code for you. Everybody go work in tech for 15 years and build a good network. And then you too can call friends at Shopify.
Right. Okay.
So
I figured that was the answer, but I just wanted to.
I will give a little more context because a couple of them weren't that. But like, I just want to be very clear. Been in the business.
So for the most part, this is just like your network, which you've built up over all your years working in tech, and you just kind of started tapping that.
Exactly.
To get these calls.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, we're building a tool. I knew who to target. I reached out to my friends who have, found their way into these companies and just said, hey, can I get 30 minutes from you? And they all went, of course, because I have some social capital that I built up over time.
Okay.
So
hey, if that's the key advice, that's fine.
yeah, so the real advice here is there's two things in there. One, just be a good human throughout your life, and your network will get better. It's just gonna happen. They'll be there for you.
I would phrase that as like give without expectation.
Nice.
Just,
when do I get to read your book?
Well, I've written almost a book's worth of stuff for teaching people how to become game masters. That's
true.
Coming out soon.
I'm reading that book.
No plans for my like life dad philosophy book yet.
Yeah, right.
I know this sounds really weird, and it's like I'm tooting my own horn, and I kind of am, but literally someone like people have asked me for that before. Like literally.
Really?
Yeah.
That's sick.
Yeah, it's weird.
That's so weird.
I think it's because when I worked at Shopify, I kind of started later in the tech industry.
Right. Yeah. You'd done.
And I've had
things.
Kids. And having children is like a massive, in my opinion anyway, it's like a massive acceleration on your like wisdom level.
Oh, right.
Like you really mature really rapidly when you have kids. It's like nothing else I've ever seen compares to that. And so because I was like a little older, more of like a mature student, so to speak, when I started in the tech industry and then had all these kids, it's like a lot of the people I was sitting around at the lunch table with and stuff at Shopify, even if they were the same age as me in number, they just were never, they weren't quite there in terms of like that dad wisdom, I guess.
I get that.
And,
but
or a lot of them were actually just younger, right? And you just have different questions and priorities when you're in your like early 20s versus like early 30s, right?
Yep.
And there's a lot of growth that happens in there. So I think I would come across as this like wise dude.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we also have a unique advantage just because of like the way we grew up too, right? Like we matured quickly due to, anyway, like lack of our dad being around. Have a different father figure, great. Stepdad's great. But like,
you think so?
I do.
I don't know, man.
I don't know, dude. Like you got stuck with this guy at 2 years old, looking up to you, trying to get some advice. So
maybe
you were like 5. So I don't know.
A lot of people, like a lot of people live like this without.
I still think it's a fairly unique advantage. Like if you manage to escape the pattern of thinking like, woe is me, this sucked, which it did sometimes, obviously. But like there's like a lot of things that can come out of it that are very positive, I think. Like if you become a self-starter,
like any sort of challenge can have a pathology or a benefit depending on how you grow into it. But I don't know. I think in general I would think of that as like a disadvantage.
It is. But I believe that
people.
Like it's like, I was a middle kid and like I read this interesting book called The Secret Power of Middle Children by some expert or whatever, but there was interesting components in it. It was like most middle children are excellent at negotiation, which you're like, oh, weird. I never thought about that. But yeah, you're like dealing with your older sibling and your younger siblings, and you're usually a peacemaker. You wind up becoming a peacemaker between the two, and like all these other, anyway, just these interesting things where you're sort of like, oh, I should lean on the advantages that this life situation has provided me rather than Anyway, this is not a psychology podcast. I am not an expert in this.
Sure, it is.
All right.
Of course, every podcast with two guys talking is really just therapy. Yeah, exactly. Obviously, that's what we're really here for. Mm-hmm. I just want to highlight that for anyone who's never looked into it. Birth order research is like super interesting.
So cool.
It's so I think it's so fascinating. Cool. If you find a book on birth order, if you're someone who grew up with siblings, obviously this is, I think, more relevant. But it is some really cool, interesting stuff. Yeah. There's no way I guarantee you'll read, if you've had siblings and you've never looked into birth order, go look into it and you'll be like almost disturbed by how accurate it is. It's like when you read a horoscope and it's like, this is exactly me. Yeah, exactly. It's maybe a little more scientific.
I was going to say, except it actually is precise rather than like, you're going to be hungry today. And you're like, oh my God.
They're right.
They're right.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows what wisdom the ancients had? We don't know.
Hey, whatever.
Anyway, back to my original question. No problem. Back to my original question, which was, how did you line up all these customer development calls with these like big fancy tech companies?
Yep.
And we covered already the real secret, which is like give without expectation.
Yep.
And build a network and take time.
Yeah.
But were there any other, like, did you have to do any cold outreach? Were there any other tricks or tips you would mention?
Yep, for sure. So the last part of the addendum to building a good network and giving without expectation is also don't discredit someone for who they are today when they're talking to you. Like, obviously protect your time. You can't just say yes to everything, all that stuff. But like some of the people that I remember wanting to speak to me when they were like way younger and they had a non-illustrious job title, they were like a server at a restaurant, like whatever, but they wanted to learn about product. Some of them are like working at Amazon or some of these tier one FANG like stocks now. So that's my only other side.
You always helped people like that.
I essentially try,
You
and like
enjoy getting people into the game. Yeah.
Sometimes to my disadvantage, because sometimes people take whatever they can and then they peace out, but it's totally worth it in the long run, honestly. But yeah, anyway. So
it comes back to giving without expectation. Like, it won't bother you if you're just like here to help and not looking for like this totally equal transactional relationship.
Yeah, like, and that's transactional relationships should exist in some places, and I guess that sort of leads into my second point. So for the cold outreach, like most of our calls have not been cold. The one that's coming is cold, and it's with a partner at Andreessen Horowitz. So this is a good example, because a lot of people would probably want to talk to somebody at Andreessen Horowitz if they're going to go raise money. They're arguably
probably
the best, biggest venture fund. No, not in the world, but in the US for sure. But anyway, Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z, great people. And the way that this one worked was a friend recommended a podcast I should listen to, which happened to be the Andreessen Horowitz podcast. And it's about developers as creatives. Okay. And so I was like, that's cool. I agree. Sure. Like, just the title is awesome. And because we're doing Codex, which is a dev tool, for now and all that stuff. Anyway, I jumped in and listened to it. And when I got to it was like 21 and 6 seconds, I think, of the episode. So if you look it up, you can check it. David, one of the partners there, goes on this riff about how developers as creatives is fascinating, because they've like, by the nature of the work that you do as a developer, you actually create these amazing systems and workflows, which include like Git, revisioning history, like decision logs, event logs, and he just rhymes off this list of things that developers and technical, like whatever, basically the systems that they've created, and kind of then he highlights, he's like, this is why they're amazing at asynchronous communication. Remote work is very plausible with them, because all these things
so much easier with
it's like stored, totally, and there's this history and like all that stuff.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And he kind of was like, more of the organization should take lessons from this part of your organization, because a lot of the other ones, it's still like, especially when you like the classical ad guy, right? Like it's like, ooh, it's smoking a cigar or whatever, like thinking about an ad. It's really weird.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that before. Like when you have to go remote as a team or split offices or whatever, the dev team picks that up so quickly. Part of it might also be there is a stereotype, which is probably partly true, that devs, like the engineering role, attracts like introverted people. Yeah. Like people who really get a lot of energy from just sitting there alone and not being bothered. So it's like they really like it. They can thrive in that environment when everything's kind of a ticket and a pull request, and like, whereas other roles maybe attract people who need to be like talking face to face more often. Yeah. But he had other good points about the tooling we've developed over time and the rituals and the practices. And it's like, it's a much more mature.
Just think about how cool it would be to have a CI/CD, like a continuous integration and continuous delivery process, with a build process for all the other parts of your company. Like, imagine if technology checked for you if your ad was ready to go live and like failed to build. Like, it'd be amazing.
Yeah, this reminds me of one of the, I think, winning products of recent times. It's like newer, but it seems to have done incredibly well. And it was exactly this. It was like the design world borrowing practices from dev, and it's Figma.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah,
Figma is a big, awesome thing everyone loves because its collaborative tooling is so good. And like, all they did was be like, we should just copy Git. Like, this is a really good idea.
Yeah, they're like, let's copy
sort
Git.
of did. Yeah.
so they copied Git and they
Sure, they've done
they
other
basically
stuff, too.
made Photoshop multiplayer on the web browser. There you go.
Great starting point.
Amazing starting
Really
point.
good. Really good idea.
Yeah.
And everyone loves it.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a reason. Anyway, so listen to this podcast. David goes on this boom, answers this question. I was just like, whoa, David, my man. And of course I'm thinking Codex. So I literally straight tweeted him. I just tweeted him the link to the minute and section. So you can look at my Twitter if you want. And was like, I listened to this. Your answer to this was, chef kiss. So can I talk to you about this product I'm working on? That's it. I'm just looking for advice. And he followed up very quickly within a few hours. Tweeted me and was like, sure, man, here's my email. Hit me. So I sent him an email, and anyway, we went back and forth. And fairly to him, the one thing he was like, well, can you send me a little more data? Because I had no pitch deck, no memo, no nothing. All we have is a prototype working, and I've been taking phone calls, right, with people I kind of know. So because I know them, they'll take a phone call. So anyway, he was just like, can you give me a little more to check? Do you have a website? Do you have anything? And I'm like, you know what? That's fair. So anyway, we got a deck together. I've got a Webflow website essentially built. I just need to finish.
I've been asking for that for weeks.
I know.
No, I'm just sorry. Ignore me. I'm just really keep going.
I just feel bad. Just work things, man. Hire me someone. Man. Anyway, yeah. So the short story is, if I actually broke this down, you want to do a cold. Be interested in them and be curious. One, you should do actual research. If you're going to go out of your way to try to do a cold or whatever, make sure that you get a short list of people you really want to meet, because you're going to do a lot of heavier lifting to get the intro. My first advice is, it does work, but there's very precise places you should do that. And investor pitching or customer discovery is generally not one of those places where you just spam people. You don't just get an email list of 300 product managers and just send them a cold email that's written one way. I don't think that's a good idea. It does work for companies sometimes to get new trials, to do whatever. Cold's a whole thing. There's an entire world of it.
Yeah.
Cool. But in this case, the point is, you're building a relationship. And if my investor is going to invest in me, it's a very important and serious relationship. Yeah. So that one came from pure product of opportunity. And David gets respect already. He's a partner at Andreessen Horowitz, of whom carries a brand trust for me. But anyway, it's find the person, do the research. If there's firms that do dev tool. So for us, we're looking at Bold Start VC. This is a great example. I really want to talk to one of the partners at Bold Start, and I don't have an intro. So I'm going to go through the process of researching the partners, go through the process of reading their quotes on things. So if they have any publications, if they have any recent talks, podcast interviews, anything like that, listen to them, go in, find the areas where they're talking about the problem space we're trying to solve, curate that into basically a customized email, a tweet, something where I can make sure that I show them that I have that level of interest and have put in that time kind of thing before asking for something. And then the thing that I ask for, I try to make as minimal as possible, like an advice phone call for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And rather than just saying, I want to pitch you my company, because that's also easy. But the other side of it is they're VC, they know you're pitching. You don't really need to tell them that. It's
right.
Asking for a 10-minute advice phone call is pitching. So it's sort of it's already inherent. And most of the time, having been on the VC side, so again, specific to VC, you invest in lines, not dots. So the first time you meet someone, you're not writing a check. It just, unless there's got to be these crazy other parameters going on.
Sure.
But they're going to meet you. They're going to talk to you. And in this case with, David, I was like, yeah, man, I'll get you a deck and a website and stuff. And I gave him a timeline that was aggressive and kind of him. He's like, hey man, I'm not in a rush. So take your time and just let me know when you're good. And I was like, okay. Cool. Nice. So we're taking a little more time to make sure that it's in a place that we're happy with it.
Yep. Yeah.
But yeah. And then just
very
reach out.
Interesting, man. Yeah. There's, I think, two things that jumped out to me about that story is the fact that when you just had that moment of inspiration opportunity, you just took the shot.
Yeah.
You didn't overthink and stop yourself. Yeah. Because this happens all the time to me, and I'm sure other people, where I don't know, you just feel this connection with someone, but then you overthink it, and you're like, oh, they don't really know me. Oh, they seem really important, really busy.
Yeah.
And you just talk yourself out of it, and you never even try.
Yep.
And what's like there's no downside to trying, especially if you take a moment to craft the request in a way that demonstrates your respect for their time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I love that you did that, and I think I should do it more often, and anyone should.
Yeah.
Don't like stop yourself by being like starstruck or whatever. Like if you want to just send, I've been telling Amanda to do this a lot actually. There's like certain bloggers she's been following for just like ever, like 10 years. I'm like, have you ever just written to them? Just like write to them.
Yeah.
Like they want to hear this.
Yeah.
Like you could be their friend.
Yeah.
Maybe not, probably not, but maybe. I don't know.
If anything, it's like, it's kind of like gratitude meditation type stuff. It's like you're just sowing positive vibes. That's just good.
Just ask.
That's
just ask.
Just
like
good.
If you want to hang out with Adele, like,
yeah, right.
You should just ask her.
Yep.
Like she probably won't agree, but who knows?
Yeah, especially if they're like that much right? of a public figure. But
yeah, maybe like that's an extreme example, but
exactly.
You get the point.
Yeah, but like I don't know, it just makes sense. Like I've wound up again. This product opportunity has put me in some weird places. Like
me too.
Running. Yeah, you just meet people. You're like, what? All right. Well, didn't you meet?
They're just people.
Yeah,
like, right.
When you were working at that hotel, you met.
I don't know.
Roger Waters and stuff like.
No, not Roger Waters.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of a different context.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's fair enough.
The other thing that stood out to me is, I think you'll find that the most successful people, who seem and probably are the busiest, are also the ones who will get back to you almost immediately.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's not weird. It's because the reason they've gotten so far in their career, and they have so much like influence and leverage, is because they've meticulously built systems for their entire career, focused on like triaging inbound requests and email and stuff. So it's like, that's a pattern you'll always see. It's like, in general, the busier, more successful seeming, the faster they'll reply to your email, because they have a system. They have an executive assistant, or like however they build the system doesn't matter. That's not the point. The point is they built it and they've refined it. Yeah. And that's how they are operating at such a high level and have such high leverage in their career.
Interesting. That's good. Yeah.
So take the shot and you'll be surprised. That's, I guess, the point.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, honestly, you will be. And I think about it a lot. Like, you're writing this giant, I guess, book at this point on DM, like getting started as a game master.
Yeah. It's a guide that's like, it's a guide, and but essentially it's the length of a like short book.
Yeah, right.
Really short book.
But a guide to becoming a game master. And this is kind of the thing. Like, if someone wants to talk to you and they send you an email when that launches and they say, hey, I saw you launched this guide. Congrats. It's amazing. You know, I run a small Patreon and I'm trying to get it going. Do you have 10 minutes for me? That's like one type of input email. But I would argue that the obviously better one is the exact same context, exact same ask, except they say on page 42, where you talked about this system, that really resonated with me. You're probably going to take the phone call. Like, it's just
totally agree.
Yeah.
Specificity really matters.
Yeah. It's like,
it's also because it's less of a burden, right?
Yeah.
It's less of a burden you're placing on the other person when you're very specific.
Yeah.
Because when you're not, when you're asking to pick their brain,
right.
That's like the classic example.
No, I know. I only do it for
that
good
places
friends.
this huge burden on the other person, because it's like, I'm agreeing to something I basically actually have no idea what the scope of it is.
Yep.
This is very open-ended. Like, who knows what I'm agreeing to here, right?
Yep.
Versus if it's like, I read this particular thing that you wrote and it was interesting for these reasons and I have this question.
Yes.
It's like, okay, I'm committed to like answering this question, which I can easily do, and I'm like happy to do it.
Yep. Yeah.
So be specific to get results.
Exactly.
Really good advice, man.
And
really
also back to the point of like highly productive, especially, you know, I guess public figures, I'll say, or whatever. Same thing, because like usually they also figured out where their strengths are and they know what to say no to and what they're good at and what they're not. So if you just say, "Can I pick your brain?" 1, it's just a pet peeve. Just don't do it. Just don't. Okay. Like, and then 2, if you're specific, they know how to say no. So you're also likely to get an answer. And that's one of the big things for me is send to archive, ignore random brain picking requests. I don't even reply, because it's not worth my time to like try and suss out what you actually want from me. Right.
Right. That's
Unless
like
I
back
know
and
you
forth
obviously
and
there's
this
this
and
whole
that, and then
There's a whole intro thing there. But yeah, like, it's like, I'm sorry, that's just a, like, I'm not, like, like, someone's been like, how do you build products? I'm like, that's a really big loaded question. Please go read things on the internet first before you call it.
Try these 10 books.
Yeah, exactly. Marty Kagan. Just read Marty Kagan.
It's it can be hard. I understand. Like, it's been hard for me too. It's always tempting to go more generic when it's a like first time or like a new relationship.
Yeah.
Because it feels weird when you're more specific. It feels like you're being bossier. Like you're like, what right do I have to ask
for this?
Like this thing. So you try to. So you sugarcoat it by being more generic, and then if you can get closer, you'll eventually just ask the actual thing you want.
Yep.
But you got to go specific. Like, busy people like really appreciate that because it feels bossy, but you're helping them. You're actually doing them a favor. Because it's like, here's a clear thing. Like you said, I know how to say no to, or I can definitely help with.
Yep.
Versus like a fuzzy, sort of high level question.
And also, I think it's just like it's kind of, maybe it's our advantage for being in tech and remote or something. But like, that's another part that layers in for me is like, it's so much easier it's hard today to just organically meet someone. One, there's a pandemic. That's one reason. So like, if anything, other advantage, there's a pandemic. People aren't going to networking events. So like, if you hit them with this specific ask, they're also probably in a heightened state of like trying to keep networking. So in my context, it's a good idea with, the partner at Andreessen, because it's like, that's their job. They literally need to get deal flow. Like, that's also just their job. So cool. But then, specific asks with this background that's like well-researched, well-written, give them a nice, easy yes, no. Another part of that is like keep them succinct. Like, busy people, attention is a huge thing. Like, not just because they're busy, but for everyone in the world, attention's a problem. So when you write an email, for the love of God, don't give me 5 paragraphs. I will be very upset and will probably just archive it. Right? Like, no joke. Like, it's like, I want 3 sentences.
Yeah.
Like, a little bit of nicety is great, but like, I don't need you to tell me that you've like whatever, unless it provides context for your ask. But like, just being like, hey, whatever, this is the thing I got a problem with. You down to help me? And then make it obvious. Like that's the other part that I don't get is like, I don't see a problem with the whole like put your Calendly link thing. I know some people do because it could feel impersonal. But for me, it's efficient. So it's like, if I'm looking at this email and I'm like, yes, I want to talk to you. Yes, I can answer this question. And like, wow, look, here's a book you on Calendly for 15 minutes, like, done. And I'm going to call you. And like, that's worked really well for me. I put it just in my email signature. I sometimes call it out as well in an email. But anyway, really, there you go. Very specific way to ask to shoot your shot.
This is actually really close to a topic that has been on my mind for the last 2 days, maybe 3 days. Because for Sword and Source, I recently kicked off basically 3 projects focused on publishing RPG supplements in the different like RPG marketplaces.
Okay.
Yeah. So there are a couple marketplaces in the RPG games like niche where people post anything from full-on games, like here's a new RPG you can play, to like small bits of content that go in the games, which I would call supplements. So it's like, here's a list of cool taverns. Here's a list of interesting characters. Sometimes there's like rules, like little tweaks to rules that they sell. Like, here's a new subclass for like paladins.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Cool.
Yeah. So these are these marketplaces, and they're kind of where all the action's at in RPGs.
Yep.
They're like, it's all centralized really around essentially 2 marketplaces. A few new ones are starting to come up, but it's like not.
I'm assuming
really
it's licensing issues often.
For like making one of these things? There's like a licensing thing there. But anyway, the point is, the reason I wanted to do these projects is because this is like kind of part of the potential market that I want to serve with Sword and Source.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like, if I can build tools or solutions to help people who produce content for games and try to sell it, like if I can help them somehow, I think that'd be great. for my mission in my business. So it's a way of like figuring, like just kind of like empathizing more with them, is to like do it myself, because I've never really done it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So like I should just do this myself, like what they're doing. And along the way, I'm kind of making note of all the approaches I take and like lessons I learn. And I'm going to publish those all as blog posts.
Cool.
So it'll be like a great way to generate some interesting content as I like share my journey of going from like a newcomer who basically knows nothing about these marketplaces to putting together a few products, putting them on the marketplaces, advertising them, trying to sell them.
Yeah.
Might completely flop, but that's probably a good story, right?
Yeah, whatever.
Like,
you're
well,
trying.
this didn't work at all, so I probably went wrong somewhere.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's a fun project. So this is something I'm going to be doing kind of constantly in the background for the next while, actually, probably several months.
Cool.
Because one of the first lessons I learned is because I have a problem, I guess, with putting out stuff that's not great, and I want that quality. It means I want art.
Oh.
And art is like super expensive and time consuming.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's like I'm looking at 2 to 3 month timelines on like these things, right?
Whoa.
Which I think is actually probably not unusual. If you're building the kind of product I want to build, you can definitely go different ways. You can just write the game content and use stock art and like kind of hurry it along, and you'll get something out faster and cheaper, and you'll be able to charge less for it. But I want to do something a little bigger, more interesting, charge a little more for it, which means I want art. And so it's just a learning experience. I didn't really know what these timelines looked like before. Yeah. Right. Now I'm starting to learn.
Yeah.
So this will be great to blog about and explain, like, here's how long these things take and how much money.
Yeah.
And I can talk more about the money later. I don't think we're going to have time today. But the point I wanted to make that connects to our earlier discussion is I have noticed I am a bad client. Like I think I'm actually a pretty good client. Like people who've worked with me as like freelancers with Sword and Source will attest to how much they like working with me. Good. Because I'm easygoing and I pay them well and quickly.
And on
time. So it's like ultimately the most important parts of being a good client are fine. Yeah. But I noticed, and I'm really bad for this. I used to do this at Shopify too all the time, like as a dev lead.
Right.
I'm really bad at handing people very closed-ended, specific tasks.
Got it.
I don't like doing it. Yeah. I really like handing people a lot more responsibility and open-endedness.
Same. Yep.
Yeah, which I think is fine, and it has its place with some people and in some contexts. And what I learned at Shopify as a lead is you need to be careful about who you delegate that way with.
Yes.
And you need to learn the specific needs of each of your reports.
Yes.
And understand, okay, this person thrives when they get more like specific mission, like I should say more like task focused like things to do. And this person thrives more when they get more open-endedness, creativity, and vagueness, right?
Yep.
And both are fine. It's not like one employee is worse or the other's better. But you need to, as a lead, understand who needs what and kind of delegate differently.
Yeah.
But my preferred default way is always like take a lot more of the thinking off my head and like really give a lot more openness, right?
Yeah.
But when you're working with freelancers, you should default the opposite way. Like you don't start with like open-ended, like, like, I don't know, this is gonna be pretty cool. Let's do this. Run with it. How much do you want to charge me?
Yeah, exactly. Can you draw me some monsters?
They don't like that. And this, I kind of started this way with a few of them, right? And within minutes of like them coming back with questions, I'm like, I'm being a bad client.
You're like, I suck. So,
and it's back to like you were talking about cold outreach and being specific with what you ask. It's like, do that with freelancers. Seriously. Yeah. Of course, part of my challenge is I'm putting together projects I've never put together before.
Right.
I actually don't even know what specifically they need sometimes. And I don't know sometimes what things are called.
Yep.
Like,
lingo, man. Yeah.
Is this, it's weird. It's like, I think of it as game design, so I call it game design. But in RPGs, like, a lot of the time it's called writing.
Oh, okay.
It's like, oh, you're a writer. But writer implies game designer sometimes, but I'm not quite sure when and how. So I'm really stumbling around here.
That's really surprising.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
There's lingo and in this industry that I don't know. So this is really great. This is like the perfect project for me to learn all this stuff. But I caught myself being like a little bit too high level and open with freelancers, and it's just not nice for them.
Dude,
a good freelance request is like, here's my budget, like an exact number. Here's my budget. Here's my timeline. They want timelines. I don't have timelines, but they want them, and that's fair because they're dealing with all, you know what this is like. They're dealing with a bunch of clients. I'm not the only person in their world, right? So here's my budget. Here's my timeline. Here's exactly what I want done in that timeline for that money. Like, exactly.
Yep.
And I was being a little loosey-goosey. So I'm tightening that up. I'm observing that and tightening that up.
Yeah.
My clients will all love me by the end, I'm sure.
Hopefully. On that side,
because I'm easy to work with and I pay well. So
exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, and like, we did the same thing, right? We brought on this awesome freelancer to help write this piece for Dignified the agency, because we really want to. Well, we have done a lot of fintech work, and we want to make that like a competency. Because generally speaking, as an agency, it's really hard to just be like, I build all software all the time. Because one, it's a lie. There's obviously types of software or code stacks, whatever, that you're not good at. Yeah. So you always wind up kind of saying like, hey, we got pillars, I guess. Like, we're really good at this and this and this. And for us, we're doing e-commerce, fintech, and then we're working on our third, because we've pinch hit so many things. We don't know which place we're like really interested in, but we really like fintech. Like, we just enjoy it. You know, I like the problem
spaces.
spaces.
You need more than just those two.
You don't.
Both
I just like threes.
Multi-bajillion dollar.
Dude, it's just the power of threes, right?
Okay.
Like, so,
okay.
You know, for the sake of it, we need a third. But I'm not in a rush to figure it out.
Okay.
But we got this journalist. She's fantastic, amazing, whatever. And when I sat down with her, I was like, I want to write like, I think we've talked about it on this podcast before. So, but the quick overview is like a long form content that's very proprietary in ways, like first level research, like introduce newness into the market around fintech. And she's like, okay, great. Obviously she's been writing in fintech for a long time. She's like, fintech's massive. So like, where do you want to go? Like, what do you want to do first? And I was like, I don't know. I just want to do fintech.
I don't know.
So let's work on it together.
I know.
And luckily for me, she was like game. So we very much like what we did is we just like kind of changed it around a bit. Instead of having a strict script or like a process or whatever, or a plan for the story or what the line was going to be. We actually just did interviews with folks that we thought had a really great understanding of like the fintech landscape.
Sure.
So either operators, VCs, investors, lawyers, banks, like whatever, like all this stuff, and just kind of like listen to them. And she like pulled she also did this amazing thing, like it's like a byline research. There's an actual term for it, but anyway, like she showed me this Google Doc, and it's just pages of like headlines in the fintech, like the important fintech things, like just the headlines. And then you do this headline review and you're like, oh, everyone's talking about this, like that's in the zeitgeist. Okay, cool. Do we talk about that? Whatever.
Headlines. Yeah. Okay.
So show me all these tricks anyway. And at the end of the day, we kind of like narrowed in on a thing, and now that's what we're running with. Cool. And it's just really interesting. So that's kind of how we did it.
and that's the thing. Like, some people can and will work this way. Yeah. They'll take on more creative responsibility on the project. They'll be happy to. They'll have more. They'll be able to work through ambiguity more. I guess I'm just trying to say, like, don't start there with freelancers. Like, start with super narrow, super specific. Yeah. And then slowly widen and generalize as you like build that relationship, or see like, oh wow, they can handle more. I can offload more stuff onto them.
Yeah. And like, you also build a relationship with them. It's one of the, like, it's obvious to me now. At the time I thought we would build a product for people and then they'd leave and then we'd go get more clients. But it's become more obvious that everyone that we build for is like, we want to keep working with you. And like, that's, there's like a multi-part there.
Because it's a pain in the butt to go from a cold relationship with a freelancer. Like,
right? And like, obviously,
you get
let's
to learn
assume
your
you did a good job.
strengths and style. And And I'm totally the same. Like, I radically prefer just rehiring the people who I know can do the thing again.
Yeah. So like accounts.
Also the searching cost. Yeah. I just went through that again too, right? Because I'm kicking off new projects. I need new things. I need new people. Yep. So I'm searching for them. And I did different approaches for different people.
Yep.
Like in one case, I kind of searched on my own quietly.
Oh, okay.
And then sent, like, kind of like what you were doing. Found them and then sort of sent like targeted specific requests to them.
Yep.
It's like, hey, I'm interested in you specifically for this thing. But for another thing, I just did like an open post, more like a what's that, push instead of pull?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I just put like more of like an open
almost
post,
like an RFP.
hey, a call for for designers, like who's into it? And I got lots of responses, but then I feel too bad when I don't like get back to everyone. And I did, like I looked at everyone and I got back to everyone. Even though, it's like I kind of found the person within the first 3.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, I still have to be accountable to like putting this out there, right?
Dude,
so alone. It's like, that's what I did. And it's just the search itself to find freelancers who have the skills you need is really kind of, for me, it's kind of annoying and time consuming.
Yeah.
Which is another reason I love once I have them in the fold and we like working with each other, if I can just hire them again, that's ideal.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, it reduces so many costs, like opportunity costs, searching costs, selection costs, like there's so much stuff in there. And straight up, like you mentioned it before, right? Obviously there's like more task oriented people and then more creative oriented, like whatever, like ambiguity they like.
Yeah, sure.
And personally, because of my style, I'm obviously more like you. And I could probably describe why, but it would take forever to go into my history. But like, I like working that way. So if I meet someone who's like, unless you tell me the exact scope and shape of the box, I'm not going to make you a box. I don't want to work with them. Like, that's my choice. And like, and it's kind of like, I'm not saying that that's bad. They're probably incredible at what they do. But like, for me, it's just not my process. So like, I prefer to give creativity. I prefer to like lead with vision and like whatever. And I think this is my argument here, is like, I tend to get the best out of people with that approach, where I found if I've been descriptive, they get it done, but it looks like what I think I would be able to make. And generally when I'm asking someone to do something, I believe that they're better than me. So it gets into this weird vibe where if I'm too descriptive, I get what I expected, but I'm like, I got exactly what I imagined without any of you in it, and you're the better one. So I was, I wanted this to be better. Like, you know what I mean? Anyway. That's my low-key pitch, I guess, for that approach. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's my take.
Well, thanks for the chat.
Yes, it was a good time. Sorry, I actually just noticed the time. I realized.
Yeah, you
we only got a couple minutes left. Any quick fire rounds there, brother? Want to ask any fun, weird questions?
All I have is a teaser because we won't have time to get into it. But regarding this new project that you and I did a hack days on, I've been thinking about it a lot. And I'm questioning, in a way, the classic tech product person wisdom of being problem focused when you try and decide what's worth working on.
Okay.
And this is like kind of a radical contrarian thing to say in our world. And there's a lot of caveats and nuances here. But yeah, this whole idea of like, focus on the problem, not the solution. Make sure it's actually a problem. Make sure it's an urgent problem. And then like, only then do you try solving it.
Yeah.
I've been following this advice for years and I continue to do so in my business. But this new project is giving me I'm starting to have a new take on this, and I'm starting to wonder if it's actually not always the best way to work in gaming. And so I'd love to expound on that sometime and explain what I'm thinking here, because
I agree.
I might be just totally wrong, but we'll see.
So I'll quickly go through this, but I agree, mainly because I am a gamer and I play a lot of video games, and I obviously play TTRPGs and stuff too. But in that context, like, I feel like it's tough to follow that approach, because the real problem space of games is like, people need an escape, they need an anxiety reducer, they want to have enjoyment in their life. Like, that's the problem space.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It's so kind of always the same problem.
It's kind of just like an infinite problem.
The problem to be solved is I need entertainment.
Yeah, so like
in gaming, right?
Yeah, so it's like, well, then how? And that's why solution architecture, I think, in gaming makes a ton of sense, because it's the how, the gameplay loops, the art design, like all of that actually makes a creative and fun experience.
Yeah.
So I follow.
Okay, wow, I'm surprised you got that so quickly from me saying basically nothing.
Because I've tried to explain this to people, like, I didn't like Red Dead Redemption 2. And I'm sorry I said it on a podcast, I'm going to get yelled at, but like, I just didn't, because I didn't have any agency. And that is like the number one reason why I just felt disconnected from easily the most beautiful, like, horseback riding simulator in the world.
It's but like, no contest there.
Yeah. Anyway.
That's
awesome.
Interesting, man.
Well, I look forward to discussing our project on the next one then.
Yeah, it's just I've been in games for so long as a consumer. We've been obsessed with them forever. I've played so many games and been like watching from afar, but now I'm on the other side of the table as a creator.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to apply these frameworks that I have from Shopify, and I'm finding in some cases I'm not sure it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, when people designed Red Dead Redemption 2, did they start out by going like through customer development calls and like trying to understand the problem they're solving? It's like,
probably not.
Did they think of it in a problem solution framework like that, where it's like, yeah, a lot of customers are complaining that they don't get enough Western like fantasy, and so we need to solve that problem. Like, the classic, like it doesn't seem to make sense to me. I think it's a little more like visionary and like solution focused.
Yeah. No, it makes a ton of sense,
man. Basically, you're just like, what would be really fucking cool?
Yeah.
That's like, just answer that question.
Yeah.
And then build that.
But it makes sense.
Then there's probably research later as you like have a prototype and see what's fun. I agree for sure that would happen. But I'm focused on that kernel moment, that seed moment where you start something new.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if I'd be better to just be asking myself, what would be fucking pretty cool?
Yeah.
And just do that.
Dude.
Okay. Thanks, bro.
It's a great idea.
We can talk about it more next time.
For sure. See you later.
See ya.